The sound of my keys hitting the ceramic dish by the door echoed through the unusually quiet house. I hadn't planned on coming home early. The meeting with our biggest client had gone smoother than expected, and my boss, Natalie, had practically pushed me out the door. "Go home, Olivia. For once in your life, take the win and leave before sunset," she'd said, her eyes crinkling at the corners. I'd resisted at first, my laptop bag still slung over my shoulder, the familiar weight a comfort. But then I thought of Mason. After 16 years of marriage, we rarely surprised each other anymore. The routine had become comfortable, predictable, our conversations at dinner following the same gentle cadence of work stories and neighborhood gossip. Maybe I could pick up Thai food from that place he loves on Maple Street. Or open that bottle of Cabernet we'd been saving. Little celebrations for no reason at all. Wasn't that something marriage counselors always recommended? Not that we needed counseling. We were fine, comfortable. I kicked off my heels by the front door, wiggling my cramped toes against the cool hardwood. The house was eerily silent. No TV sports commentary from the living room, no shower running upstairs. "Mason?" I called out, dropping my bag on the entryway bench. "I'm home early." That's when I heard it, a muffled sound from the kitchen. Something between a cough and a sob. I froze, my stockinged feet suddenly rooted to the floor. "I can't do this anymore." Mason's voice, barely recognizable, broken in a way I'd never heard before. "I can't keep pretending." My heart stuttered in my chest. I took one silent step toward the kitchen, then another. "She doesn't—" His voice cracked. "She has no idea, none, and it's killing me." Time seemed to slow as I inched toward the kitchen doorway. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows, casting long shadows across the tile floor. And there, hunched over the island counter, was my husband, his broad shoulders shaking with silent sobs, one hand clutching his phone against his ear, the other pressed against his mouth as if trying to physically hold back his grief. "I have to tell her," he whispered into the phone. "Tonight. I've made my decision." I must have made a sound, some small gasp or step that creaked the floorboard, because Mason suddenly stiffened, his back still to me. "I have to go," he said quickly. "She's home." He turned slowly, his phone dropping to the counter with a clatter. His face was ravaged, eyes red-rimmed, cheeks wet with tears. For a moment we just stared at each other across the kitchen island, the granite expanse between us suddenly as vast as an ocean. "Olivia," he said, my name a broken thing in his mouth. "You're home early." The words I'd heard hung in the air between us. "I can't keep pretending. She has no idea. I have to tell her tonight." I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. The world as I knew it was shattering around me, and all I could do was stand perfectly still in the midst of the falling pieces. 8 months earlier. To the most beautiful bride Brooklyn has ever seen, Ellie raised her champagne flute, her maid of honor speech already making me tear up, and to her disgustingly handsome, annoyingly perfect husband. Laughter rippled through the reception hall as my sister continued, "Cassie, my baby sister, finding you dancing with Jacob at my own wedding reception 4 years ago was the best wedding gift I never asked for." I watched Cassie's face glow as she leaned into Jacob's shoulder, their newlywed joy radiating across the room. Beside me, Mason squeezed my hand under the table. "Remember our wedding?" he whispered, his breath warm against my ear. "You tripped coming down the aisle," I elbowed him gently. "And you cried so hard during your vows that your best man had to supply tissues." Mason's eyes crinkled at the corners. "Best day of my life." I studied his face, the face I'd woken up to for 16 years. The lines at his eyes deeper now, the salt and pepper at his temples new in the last few years. My steady, dependable Mason, the man who'd held my hair back through morning sickness, who'd cried with me through our losses, who'd never once made me doubt that I was the center of his world. After Ellie's toast, as couples began filling the dance floor, Mason stood and offered me his hand. "Mrs. Reynolds, may I have this dance?" I smiled up at him. "I've been waiting all night for you to ask, Mr. Reynolds." As he led me to the dance floor, Cassie intercepted us, throwing her arms around my neck. "I'm so glad you both could come," she said, her words slightly slurred from champagne and happiness. "It means everything to have family here." "We wouldn't have missed it," I assured her, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear, a big sister gesture I couldn't seem to outgrow even now that she was 30. Over her shoulder, I noticed Mason exchange a look with Jacob, something quick and unreadable passing between them. Before I could think about it, Cassie was pulling away, tugged back to the dance floor by her new husband. Later, as Mason and I swayed to an old Sinatra standard, I noticed Jacob at the bar, deep in conversation with Mason's brother Ryan. Both men looked intense, Jacob gesturing emphatically while Ryan shook his head. "What do you think that's about?" I murmured against Mason's collar. He glanced over, then shrugged. "Probably sports or politics. You know how Ryan gets." I hummed in agreement, but something about the scene nagged at me. When Jacob caught my eye across the room, he looked away quickly, turning his back to the dance floor. "Have you noticed anything off with Jacob tonight?" I asked. Mason's arms tightened around my waist. "Let's not worry about other people's marriages on their wedding day," he said gently. "Besides, I'm too busy remembering how beautiful you looked on our wedding day." I laughed, letting the moment pass. Shameless flatterer. He kissed me then, in the middle of the dance floor, surrounded by twinkling lights and the sounds of celebration. "Only stating facts, counselor." That night, in our hotel room, Mason made love to me with an intensity that took my breath away. Afterward, as he slept beside me, I traced the line of his jaw with my fingertip, wondering at the faint worry line between his brows that didn't smooth away even in sleep. The kitchen felt airless, the 6 feet between us stretching like miles. Mason wiped hurriedly at his face with the back of his hand, like a child caught in the act. "Olivia," he repeated, as if saying my name might break the horrible tension. "The Henderson meeting. I thought it was scheduled until 6. My throat was dry, words scraping as they came out. "It ended early. That's good." He attempted a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Who were you talking to?" My voice sounded foreign to my own ears. Too calm, too measured. Mason's eyes darted to his phone on the counter, then back to me. "Ryan, just brother stuff." The lie hung between us, so blatant it was almost insulting. In 16 years of marriage, I'd never known Mason to cry on the phone to his brother. Not when his father died, not when we lost the baby. Mason didn't cry easily. It was one of the things that made his wedding day tears so precious to me. "Don't." The word came out sharper than I intended. "Don't lie to me." He flinched as if I'd slapped him. "Liv, I heard you." I took a step closer to the island, resting my fingertips on the cool granite to steady myself. "What can't you keep pretending? What don't I know that's killing you?" For a moment, I thought he might continue the lie, offer some explanation about work stress or family drama. Instead, his shoulders sagged, and he pulled out one of the kitchen stools, sinking onto it as if his legs could no longer support him. "I was going to tell you tonight," he said quietly. I had it all planned. Dinner, wine, the words all rehearsed. The calm that had descended over me began to crack, fear seeping through the fissures. In an instant, my mind conjured a parade of horrors: terminal illness, financial ruin, infidelity. The last seemed the most likely, the oldest story in the world. Husband, wife, the other woman. Is there someone else? The question burned my throat. Mason's head snapped up, his eyes wide. "What? No. God, Olivia, no. Never." The vehemence in his denial should have been reassuring, but it only confused me more. If not another woman, then what secret had reduced my steady, reliable husband to tears in our kitchen on a Tuesday afternoon? "Then what is it?" I demanded, my voice rising. "Because I came home to find my husband sobbing on the phone, saying he can't keep pretending and that I have no idea about something that's apparently killing him. So forgive me if I'm jumping to conclusions." Mason pressed his palms against his eyes, his breathing ragged. When he looked up at me again, his expression was one of absolute desperation. "It's Jacob," he said finally. I blinked, momentarily thrown. "Jacob, Cassie's husband?" Mason nodded, the movement jerky. "What about him? Is he sick? Did something happen to Cassie?" My mind raced, trying to connect this to Mason's breakdown. "No, they're fine. Physically, at least." He swallowed hard. "The marriage isn't." I frowned, processing this information. "Okay. I mean, that's terrible. But why would their marital problems make you—" "Because I knew," Mason interrupted, his voice cracking. "I've known since before the wedding that Jacob was cheating on her." The kitchen went silent save for the steady drip of the faucet I'd been meaning to fix. Outside, a lawnmower roared to life in the distance. "You knew?" I repeated, the words feeling thick and unwieldy on my tongue. "Before the wedding?" "Our Cassie's wedding." Mason nodded miserably. "Jacob told me at his bachelor party. He was drunk, said it was a mistake, that it was over, and would never happen again. He begged me not to tell anyone, said he truly loved Cassie and would spend the rest of his life making it up to her." Anger flashed through me, hot and clarifying. "And you believed him? You let my sister marry a cheater? He swore it was a one-time thing. He was so convincing, Liv. You know Jacob, when he turns on that earnest lawyer charm. And I thought telling Cassie would only hurt her for no reason if it truly was over." I gripped the edge of the counter, the stone cold against my palms. "That wasn't your decision to make." "I know that now," Mason whispered. "But at the time, God, Olivia, I was trying to protect everyone. I thought I was doing the right thing." "And now?" I demanded. "What's changed? Why the breakdown I walked in on?" Mason's face crumpled. "He's still doing it. It wasn't a one-time thing. He's been cheating on her this whole time with multiple women. Ryan found out. He saw Jacob with someone at a hotel bar in Chicago last week." The betrayal felt personal, as if Mason had cheated on me himself. My sister, my baby sister who'd survived our parents' toxic marriage, who'd worked so hard to believe in love again, was living a lie. "And my husband had helped construct it. That was Ryan on the phone?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Mason nodded. "He's furious with me for not speaking up sooner. Says I'm as much to blame as Jacob is now." "He's right," I said, the words like stones dropping between us. Mason flinched but didn't argue. "I know. That's why I have to tell her. Tonight. I can't keep watching her build a life with someone who's lying to her. I can't keep pretending I don't know." I stared at him. This man I thought I knew completely. How could you keep this from me? "All these months?" He looked away, shame written across his features. "At first I thought it was over, that telling you would just burden you with a secret we'd both have to keep from your sister. Then, when I started to suspect it was still happening, I was ashamed. Ashamed that I'd made the wrong call, that I'd trusted Jacob over my own instincts. So instead you lied to me, to Cassie. For 8 months. Each word felt like glass in my mouth. I didn't lie. A lie of omission is still a lie, Mason." My voice echoed off the kitchen tiles. "God, do you have any idea what this will do to her? To find out not only that her husband has been unfaithful their entire marriage, but that her brother-in-law knew and said nothing? That her own sister might have known?" Mason's head snapped up. "I never said you knew. Do you think that matters? Do you think she'll believe I was in the dark when you've been carrying this secret for months?" Tears stung my eyes. "She'll never trust me again. Either of us?" Mason stood, taking a step toward me, but I backed away, needing distance. "Don't," I warned, holding up a hand. "Just don't touch me right now." He stopped, pain etched across his face. "Olivia, please. I made a terrible mistake, but I was trying to do what I thought was right. By lying to me? By letting my sister live in ignorance while her husband makes a fool of her." I shook my head, disgust rising in my throat. "That's not the man I married. The Mason I know values honesty above all else. The Mason I know would never let someone he loves be deceived like this." "I'm still that man," he insisted, his voice breaking. "I'm still the man who loves you more than anything. Who would do anything to protect you and your family? Except tell the truth, I said bitterly. Mason's phone buzzed on the counter, making us both jump. Ryan's name flashed on the screen. Neither of us moved to answer it. What happens now? Mason asked quietly after the buzzing stopped. I took a deep breath, trying to think through the fog of betrayal and anger. We tell her, today. Not tonight, not after some carefully planned dinner. Right now, we? Hope flickered across his face. Yes, we, I said firmly. Not because I'm forgiving you, but because Cassie needs both of us right now. She needs to know that whatever happens with Jacob, she has family she can count on. Mason nodded, relief washing over his features. Thank you. Don't thank me, I said coldly. This isn't for you. It's for my sister. I turned away from him, pulling my phone from my pocket to text Cassie. As I typed, asking if she could come over right away for something important, another realization hit me, one that made my stomach clench with a different kind of dread. Mason, I said slowly, not turning to look at him. If Jacob has been unfaithful all this time, has he been tested? Could he have exposed Cassie to something? The sharp intake of breath behind me was answer enough. It was yet another consequence neither of us had fully considered. I'll call my doctor, I said, my voice hard. See if she can fit Cassie in today after we tell her. Olivia? Mason's voice was pleading. Don't, I cut him off. Just, don't say anything else right now. We need to focus on Cassie. As I finished texting my sister, I felt hollow, as if something fundamental had been scooped out of me. Trust, maybe, or the certainty that I knew the man I'd married. Either way, nothing would be the same after today. Not for Cassie, not for Mason, and not for me. Telling Cassie was every bit as awful as I'd imagined. She sat on our couch, confusion giving way to disbelief, then anger, then a devastation so profound it was physically painful to witness. When Mason admitted how long he'd known, her eyes had flown to mine, searching for confirmation that I'd been kept in the dark as well. The relief in her expression when I assured her I'd just found out was small comfort against everything else she was losing. I need to go, she'd said finally, her voice eerily calm as she gathered her purse. I need to talk to Jacob. Cass, wait, I'd tried to stop her. Let me come with you. You shouldn't be alone right now. She'd looked at me then, her eyes red-rimmed but clear. I've been alone in my marriage for 8 months, apparently. I think I can handle the next few hours. Before leaving, she'd turned to Mason, her expression hardening. You were supposed to be my brother. Family doesn't do this to family. The door had closed behind her with a quiet click, more devastating than if she'd slammed it. Now, hours later, Mason and I moved through the house like ghosts, separate, silent, each lost in our own thoughts. I'd called her repeatedly, but each call went straight to voicemail. Finally, Ellie texted to let me know Cassie was staying with her for the night, that she was as okay as can be expected, and that she needed space. I was sitting at the kitchen table, staring at nothing when Mason approached hesitantly. I made some tea, he said, placing a mug in front of me. I looked up at him, really looked at him for the first time since our confrontation. He appeared older somehow, the lines around his mouth deeper, his eyes shadowed. This secret had been eating him alive, just as he'd said on the phone. Thank you, I said, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. He hovered uncertainly, as if waiting for permission to join me. After a moment, I nodded at the chair across from me. He sat, cradling his own mug. I keep replaying it all in my head, he said quietly. The bachelor party. The wedding. Every time we've seen them since. Wondering if there was a moment when I should have spoken up, when it would have hurt less. I sipped my tea, letting the warmth slide down my throat. There's never a good time to tell someone their husband is unfaithful. But before they said I do would have been better than after. He winced. I know, I believed him, Liv. When he swore it was over, that it would never happen again, I wanted to believe him. For Cassie's sake. And when you started to suspect it wasn't over, Mason stared into his mug. I told myself I needed proof. That I couldn't destroy their marriage based on suspicion. But the truth is, I was a coward. The longer I waited, the harder it became to speak up. The honesty in his admission pierced through some of my anger. Not enough to forgive him, but enough to recognize the very human failing behind his actions. Ryan thinks I'm just as bad as Jacob, Mason continued, his voice barely audible. That I'm complicit in the cheating because I knew and said nothing. Are you? I asked, the question genuine rather than accusatory. Mason looked up, startled. I don't know anymore, he admitted. I never would have cheated on you. Not in a million years. The thought of being with anyone else has never even crossed my mind. But you kept Jacob's secret, I pointed out. You protected a cheater instead of the person being cheated on. Yes, he acknowledged, the word heavy with regret. Why? I pressed. That's what I can't understand. The Mason I know, the man I married, has always valued honesty above all else. Even when the truth is difficult. Mason was quiet for so long I thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick with unshed tears. My father, he said simply. I frowned, confused. Your father? What does he have to do with this? Mason set down his mug, running a hand over his face. Do you remember what I told you about my parents' divorce? That my father left my mother for his secretary? I nodded. It was a story I'd heard early in our relationship, the classic infidelity tale that had shaped Mason's views on marriage and commitment. What I never told you, he continued, is that I knew. Months before my mother found out, I saw them together at a restaurant when I was supposed to be at baseball practice. My father saw me too, and later he asked me not to tell her. Mason, I breathed, understanding beginning to dawn. You were just a child, he shook his head. I was 16. Old enough to know better, old enough to know what I was seeing was wrong. And you kept his secret, I guessed. For 3 months, he confirmed. The guilt was unbearable, but every time I tried to tell her, I'd remember the way he looked at me when he asked me to keep quiet. Like we were conspirators. Like I was finally the son he'd always wanted, the one who had his back no matter what. My heart ached for the 16-year-old boy, torn between loyalty to his father and his own moral compass. When she finally found out, Mason continued, it destroyed her. Not just the affair, but knowing I'd known and said nothing. She looked at me like I was him, like I'd betrayed her just as much as he had. So, when Jacob told you about his infidelity, it was like history repeating itself, Mason admitted. I froze. All I could think about was my mother's face when she realized I'd kept my father's secret. And I thought if Jacob was truly sorry, if it really was over, maybe Cassie never needed to feel that kind of betrayal. I reached across the table and laid my hand over his, the first voluntary contact I'd initiated since discovering his secret. I'm so sorry that happened to you, I said softly. But Mason, you're not 16 anymore. And Jacob isn't your father. I know, he whispered. I made the wrong choice. Again. And now Cassie is hurting just like my mother did. And you're looking at me the same way she looked at my father. I squeezed his hand, then withdrew mine. I'm angry with you. Disappointed. But I don't think you're like your father. Or like Jacob. You made a terrible mistake trying to protect people from pain. But your intentions weren't malicious. Does that matter? He asked, looking up at me with red-rimmed eyes. If the result is the same, if people get hurt anyway? I considered his question seriously. Intentions don't erase consequences. But yes, I think they matter when it comes to forgiveness and moving forward. Hope flickered across his face. Do you think you can forgive me? Eventually? I don't know, I answered honestly. I need time, and so does Cassie. Mason nodded, accepting this. I'll sleep in the guest room tonight. Thank you, I said, relieved he hadn't pushed for normalcy. As he stood to leave the kitchen, I called after him. Mason? He turned, his expression wary. Is there anything else? Any other secrets I should know about? He held my gaze steadily. No, nothing. I swear to you, Olivia, there is nothing else I'm hiding. I believed him. Despite everything, I believed him. The next 3 weeks were among the hardest of my life. Cassie filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences, though we all knew the truth. Jacob didn't contest it, his guilt apparent in his immediate agreement to her terms. He moved out of their apartment and into a hotel. Mason and I existed in a state of fragile truce. He continued to sleep in the guest room, and we spoke mainly about practical matters: bills, schedules, updates about Cassie. The distance between us felt both necessary and painful, like a bone being set after a break. One evening, as I was cooking dinner, a solitary meal, as Mason had texted he'd be working late, the doorbell rang. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and went to answer it, surprised to find Cassie standing on our front step. "Cass?" I breathed, relieved to see her. Though we'd spoken on the phone, she'd been avoiding in-person visits. "Come in." She followed me into the house, her eyes darting around as if checking whether Mason was home. "He's at work," I assured her. "Late meeting," she nodded, visibly relaxing. "Good. I mean, not that I'm ready to see him yet. I needed to talk to you." We settled in the living room, Cassie perching on the edge of the couch as if ready to flee at any moment. "How are you?" I asked gently. She gave a short, humorless laugh. "How do you think?" "My marriage is over. My husband was cheating on me before we even said our vows, and my brother-in-law knew and said nothing." "I'm so sorry, Cass." "It's not your fault," she said quickly. "I know you didn't know." Mason confirmed that. I nodded, relief washing through me that at least this part of our relationship remained intact. "I would have told you. Immediately. I know." She twisted her hands in her lap. "That's actually why I'm here. I've been thinking a lot about secrets and honesty these past few weeks." "That's understandable," I said carefully. "The thing is," she continued, "I've been so angry with Mason, so hurt that he'd keep something like this from me. But then I realized I've been keeping something from you too." I frowned, surprised by this turn in the conversation. "What do you mean?" Cassie took a deep breath as if steeling herself. "Do you remember 3 years ago when you and Mason were going through that rough patch, after you lost the baby?" My chest tightened at the memory. The miscarriage, the grief that had driven a wedge between us, the counseling that had eventually helped us find our way back to each other. "Of course," I said. "What about it?" "Mason came to see me one night," Cassie said, her voice trembling slightly. He was a wreck, Liv. Said he didn't know how to help you, that you were shutting him out, that he was afraid you might leave him." I swallowed hard. Remembering that dark period when I'd been so consumed by my own grief, I could barely acknowledge Mason's. "He asked me what he should do," Cassie continued. "And I told him. I told him to give you space. That grief works differently for everyone, and that pushing you to talk might make things worse." "That was good advice," I said. Still confused about where this was going, Cassie's eyes welled with tears. "No, it wasn't. Because what I didn't tell him, what I didn't tell either of you, was that I saw you that same week, going into a therapist's office downtown." I stared at her, the memory surfacing slowly. "Dr. Levine," I murmured. "I only saw her twice before Mason and I started couples counseling," Cassie nodded. "I should have told Mason you were seeking help. It would have given him hope that you were trying to work through your grief, that you weren't giving up on your marriage. But I didn't say anything because I thought I was respecting your privacy." "Cass, let me finish," she interrupted. "The point is, I kept something from Mason that might have helped him during one of the worst periods of your marriage. I had good intentions. I wanted to respect your privacy, to let you tell him in your own time. But looking back, I wonder if I made the right call." Understanding dawned as I realized what she was trying to say. "You think this is the same as what Mason did? Keeping Jacob's infidelity from you?" "No," she said firmly. "What Mason did was much worse, much more consequential. But I understand a little better why someone might keep a secret they think is protecting someone else. Even if they're wrong." I reached over and took her hand. "Cass, that's not the same thing at all. You were respecting my medical privacy. Mason was hiding information that directly affected your ability to make informed decisions about your own life." "I know," she acknowledged. but it's helped me understand that good people sometimes make bad judgment calls. That secrets kept out of misguided protection aren't the same as secrets kept out of malice. Her words echoed my own thoughts from that night with Mason in the kitchen, when he'd revealed the trauma with his father that had influenced his decision to stay silent. "Are you saying you forgive him?" I asked cautiously. Cassie sighed. "Not yet. Maybe not ever fully. But I'm working on not hating him. On believing that he didn't mean to hurt me. That's remarkably generous of you." She gave me a sad smile. "Well, I've had a crash course in how quickly life can change. How relationships you thought were solid can crumble overnight. It's made me think about what's worth holding on to and what's worth letting go." We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of her words settling between us. "How are you and Mason?" she finally asked. "Really?" I hesitated, uncertain how to describe the limbo we'd been living in. "We're figuring it out. He's been sleeping in the guest room." "Because you asked him to? Or because he thought he should?" "Both, I think," I admitted. I needed space to process everything, to decide if I could trust him again. "And can you?" Her question was gentle but direct. I considered it carefully. "I'm getting there," I said finally. "What he did was wrong. There's no question about that. But when I think about our 16 years together, all the times he's been honest even when it was difficult, all the ways he's supported me, loved me, I can't believe this one terrible lapse in judgment defines who he is as a person or a husband." Cassie squeezed my hand. "Then tell him that, before too much time passes and the distance becomes permanent." "I will," I promised, struck by the irony of receiving relationship advice from my sister whose own marriage was ending. "What about you? How are you really doing?" She released my hand, leaning back against the couch. "Honestly, some days I can barely get out of bed. Other days I'm so angry I could set Jacob's belongings on fire. But then there are moments when I feel relieved." "Relieved?" I echoed, surprised. "There were signs," she admitted. "Things I ignored or explained away because I wanted so badly to believe we were happy. Now at least I'm not living a lie anymore. There's some freedom in that, even through the pain." I moved to sit beside her on the couch, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "You're going to be okay, Cass. Not today or tomorrow, but eventually." She rested her head against my shoulder. "I know, and so are you and Mason." We sat like that until the timer in the kitchen dinged, reminding me of the dinner I'd left half prepared. "Stay," I urged as we walked back to the kitchen. "I'm making enough for 3, and I'm sure Mason would want to see you." Cassie hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, maybe it's time to start rebuilding, one difficult conversation at a time." When Mason came home and found Cassie in our kitchen, helping me finish preparing dinner, he froze in the doorway, his briefcase slipping from his fingers. "Cassie," he breathed, her name a prayer and a plea. She turned to face him, her posture stiff but her expression open. "Hello, Mason." For a moment, they just looked at each other across the kitchen, the same kitchen where, 3 weeks earlier, I'd discovered the secret that had upended all our lives. Then Cassie took a small step forward. "I'm still angry with you," she said clearly. "I still think what you did was wrong." Mason nodded, not defending himself, simply accepting her words. "But," she continued, "I'm trying to understand why you did it. And I'm trying to find a way forward where we can still be family." The hope that bloomed across Mason's face was heartbreaking in its intensity. "I don't deserve that," he said hoarsely. "But I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of it." Cassie gave him a tight nod. "Dinner's almost ready. Olivia says you still can't make rice without burning it, so I took over that part." It was a small olive branch, wrapped in the familiar teasing that had always characterized their relationship. Mason let out a choked laugh. "That's true, though I've gotten better at pasta." "Marginally," I interjected, the 3 of us falling into a fragile but recognizable pattern. Dinner was awkward but healing. We avoided discussing Jacob directly, focusing instead on Cassie's work, Mason's new project, the book I'd been reading. Normal conversation that felt extraordinary given the circumstances. After Cassie left, promising to call me the next day, Mason and I cleaned up the kitchen in companionable silence. As I wiped down the counter, I noticed him watching me, his expression uncertain. "What?" I asked, setting down the dishcloth. "Thank you," he said simply, "for including me tonight, for giving Cassie the space to begin to forgive me. For not what?" He swallowed hard. "For not giving up on us, even when you had every right to." I moved closer to him, resting my hands lightly on his chest. 16 years, Mason? That's what we've built together. I'm not saying what you did wasn't wrong, or that it didn't shake my trust in you. But one mistake, even a big one, doesn't erase everything else. He covered my hands with his own. "I promise you, Olivia, no more secrets, no matter what." "I believe you," I said, and realized as the words left my mouth that I truly did. Mason's eyes searched mine. "Does this mean—" I leaned up and pressed a soft kiss to his lips, answering his unfinished question. When I pulled back, I saw tears glistening in his eyes. "Come to bed," I said quietly. Our bed. That night, as we lay together in the darkness, Mason's arm wrapped securely around my waist, I thought about the moments that define a marriage, not just the big ones like weddings and anniversaries, but the painful ones too. The miscarriage that had nearly broken us, the secret that had threatened to do the same. Yet here we were, still together, still choosing each other despite the hurt and disappointment. Still finding our way back to each other through honesty and forgiveness. "I love you," Mason whispered against my hair, his voice heavy with sleep. "I love you too," I replied, realizing that despite everything, those words remained unshaken. In the morning, I'd call Cassie, check on how she was doing after seeing Mason. In the weeks to come, we'd continue to navigate the new landscape of our relationships, sister to sister, husband to wife, brother-in-law to sister-in-law. It wouldn't be easy. Trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. But as I drifted toward sleep in my husband's arms, I felt something I hadn't expected to feel again so soon. Hope. Hope that we could all heal from this. Hope that the truth, however painful, had set us free from the weight of secrets, and in that moment, that was enough.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.